Hello everyone, and today we're back in another Loomian Legacy video, and we're making a Loomian Legacy PvP tier list in 2023. So we got all of the fully evolved Loomians on this list, and we'll be ranking them from broken, S, A, A-, B, B-, C, D, or F. And this pretty much just determines how good these Loomians are at PvP right now. So let's get started. And we're actually going to start with Seer Knight. And Seer Knight has a lot of good things going for it. It can place barbs, it can lower the attack for melee attackers, and it has very good bulk on both sides. It also has a very good defensive typing. Although I do see a lot of people not use Seer Knight correctly, and if it uses its secret ability, it doesn't actually hit that hard. Awakening Seer Knight, though, does hit hard, but you also lose the Terrifying, so it's definitely a very interesting situation. This could be considered the best starter in Loomian Legacy, in my opinion. I could see this up there, but I think I'm going to put Seer Knight in A tier. Considering that it has barbs and can be fit on a lot of teams, I'm going to put it in the A tier. There is no healing, and that's why it's out of the S tiers, because it has no reliable way of healing. So I think the A tier is a good spot for Seer Knight. Luminami. Where would Luminami go? With its Power Napper and Rejuvenate, I think Luminami's in the same tier as Seer Knight. I'm going to have to put it in the A tier. And again, the reasons why Luminami is in the A tier is because I just don't think it does that well right now. Because there are so many plant types in the game right now. There are plant types that just wall Luminami, not to mention that there's the Clips. And I know that there's Frost Beam and Mega Chomp that can actually hit those plant types super effectively. But the problem is that you're not going to be able to pivot efficiently without Flash and Flee. You're mainly going to be clicking Flash and Flee 50% of the time, unless you ultra reliably know that a plant type's going to come in. So that's why Luminami's in the A tier. It is definitely closer to the S tier than Seer Knight, but it's only in the A tier nonetheless. Now we're into Tatab. Tatab, I think, is in the same area. Honestly, I think a lot of the starters are in the same tier, as weird as it sounds. Tatab's also in the A tier. This thing hits extremely hard. Awakening, 126 melee attack. Oh my gosh. With that really fast speed, makes Tatab one of the best wall breakers in the game. And it's probably one of the hardest hitting melee attackers in the entire game. Probably even more than Ursul and Mutagon, which is kind of insane. The only reason why Tatab is honestly out of the S tier or broken territory is because Harvestect and Obsidragon do kind of wall you, and let's not mention that Plant Brawler is really bad offensively. Plant Brawler is really bad offensively, at least compared to other typings. You do have Poison, though, meaning that you can poison other Loomians, which is very nice, but it's not enough to raise it to the S tier. Now the next is going to be Valkyrie, and I'm going to put Valkyrie in A-. I think it's a tier lower, and the reasons why I think Valkyrie is a tier lower than these three is because I think its offensive typing is really bad. Metal Light is just not quite there, and while it does have air coverage in a really high range attack stat, I mean, its range attack is similar to Tatab's melee attack. And if you combine Awakening and Magnify on top of that, Valkyrie is extremely scary. It even has Rejuvenate. There's a lot that is actually going for Valkyrie. But there are so many Loomians that can actually wall Valkyrie, and since it's weak to Brawler types, Body Crash users just destroy you if you're not careful. So that's why Valkyrie is a step lower, even though it does have some good stuff. It does have a lot of flaws, considering that it's an offensive Loomian that doesn't have a very good offensive typing, so it's in A-. Now we have Vesperatu. Vesperatu, I'm debating either S tier or A, and I think I'm actually going to put it in the S tier. I think it's in low S. Let me say my reasonings. It has Slapdown Stab and Priority. It also has Revival for healing, a pretty solid speed stat in 99, and it has an ability to increase its damage. Vesperatu also has a very solid typing offensively, and while defensively is questionable, its defensive typing makes it so it's a spirit type that can actually soak spirit hits. Because since you have the dark typing with your spirit, you're only neutral to spirit, meaning that you can pretty much beat any other spirit type, which is really good. Vesperatu does have its flaws, though. Clips and Cephalops are still a problem, even with Slash. And there are other melee wall breakers that can do better. But I think that's a spirit type. I think Vesperatu's on the top tier in terms of spirit types. So I think it definitely deserves to be above Seer Knight, Luminami, and Tatub. So it's definitely going in the S tier. Himber is going to go in the B tier. The thing is that's so weird about Himber is that Himber has so many pros, and honestly, I use Himber a lot, and I honestly want to put it higher. I honestly utilize it very well. Ice Earth offensively is really good. This thing hits solidly hard, has amazing melee bulk. Its melee bulk is off the chart. This is a very good Loomian to run Raidful plushie with. You could also run Half Amulet to gain HP back. You could run Mudslide to get rid of barbs. There's actually a lot of things you can run Himber with, which is nice. The problem is that it only has 45 speed. So, yeah, it gets outsped a lot. This thing can get easily revenge killed, and that's why it is in the B tier. If its speed was like 65, if it was like a little bit higher, making it outspeed a lot more tanks, this thing would definitely be in like the A tier. But since it gets outsped by the majority of the meta, it's only going in the B tier. And now the last one is Zulong, and it's going in B-. It does have Zip Zap and Ancient Roar as pivot, but the problem is that there are other Loomians that can pivot out, which are better, in my opinion. I mean, there's the Ludrix, who has just the most insane coverage in the entire game. We also have Yursnack and Luminami, who are just slow pivots that can gain HP back. And not to mention that there are just other pivot users that could be utilized better than a Zulong. And while Zulong can be very dangerous, it doesn't have the best coverage in the world. So, and it gets walled by a lot of Loomians too. It gets walled by Eliguana, gets walled by Tyrex, gets walled by Venolin, gets walled by Terraclaw, gets walled by a lot of the game. So, yeah, Zulong is unfortunately the worst starter in the game, even though it does have the pivot options. And ever since Specialty Boots has been added, there are now Loomians that can actually outspeed Zulong, which really dropped Zulong a lot. So that's why it's only at B-. Now we get Umbrat. Umbrat will honestly be at B- because of Chase Down. This is quite specifically on Chase Down, because if you have a Loomian that resists Dark-type moves, that Loomian will pretty much that Loomian will wall Umbrat. But the reason why it's at B- is because Chase Down is changed to a Dark-type move, meaning that you can't swap out of your plant types when Umbrat's on the field because the potential threat of Chase Down getting boosted. So that's why Umbrat is in the B- and not in the bottom 3 tiers, because it does have a solid niche. A solid niche that actually is good for it. It is better than Luxor, which Luxor is in the C tier. Luxor is bad, but I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Pure Light offensively isn't that good, and even with Fire Breath, there are still Loomians that wall it, like Nimue, Metatoad, even like Chartiki can, but it does actually hit pretty hard, and running the mixed Luxor set is actually pretty dangerous. So, Luxor is solid. I don't think it's great. Heck, I don't even think it's good, but I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I think it's at least C tier. It's unviable, sure, but I don't think it's horrible, unlike some of the other Loomians that would be placed in the D and F. Teclipse, no questions there. Even though there are Loomians like Vesperatu that can actually hit it now, Teclipse is still very dangerous. Total Eclipse gives it more immunities and weaknesses, and the fact that Dark and Light type moves can give it a speed boost just is another thing that really puts Teclipse over the edge. Definitely deserves to be in the broken tier, and this was actually in the top 3 of top 15 broken Loomians, so yeah, this thing is very OP. Cinemoth, F. Sorry. This thing is F. I mean, you need a Magnify in order to even do slight damage. It has nothing going for it. The only thing that slightly goes for it is the 83 speed. Even then, that's really below average for something with Magnify. If you want to use a Magnify user that is a lot better, with better coverage, why not use our Pygo and Baneki? Cinemoth is so freaking bad. This thing has nothing that goes for it. And while it does have some okayish moves and Magnify, there's just no reason to use it. And it's so weak. It doesn't have a good ability. This thing is bad. It definitely deserves F tier. Sumo Beetle, B-. It's a solid Loomian. It definitely has some downfalls, but it is definitely pretty interesting. Double Strike's a really solid ability. The Guru ability is definitely very interesting, especially when combined with Bamboozled and Horndashi. And also, Fire Slam is very good to hit Stratosaur, another bug type that can actually hit Stratosaur, which is awesome. Although overall, it's not necessarily amazing. So, it belongs in B-. Avatros, C. It does have Brawn Boost, and it has Driving Force. But that's kind of all that goes for it. If it has a very powerful Brawler type move in the future, it will definitely go up to like the A- tier. And also, its mainly damaging moves does recoil it a lot. So, just like with Luxor, actually, now thinking about it. So, that's why Avatros is in the C. And it needs a lot of Brawn Boost in order to actually be very dangerous. Swolder is actually in the B tier. Swolder is extremely underrated. Swolder might be the most underrated Loomian in the entire game. Toxic Bug is a very interesting defensive typing. It has Rejuvenate, it can Poison, and it actually has Mega Punch and Brawn Boost, so you can even run a Sweeping Swolder. It's not amazing, and I don't think it's in the top 30, but it's definitely a very underrated Loomian that should get a lot more attention. Swolder is definitely B tier. I'm even debating about putting it in A-, honestly, but I think B is a good spot for Swolder. Florant, F. Nothing else to say here. Probably one of the worst Loomians in the entire game. Terrafly, C tier. The thing is with Terrafly is that, despite having a pretty solid melee attack stat and Ambush as an ability, it gets replaced by pretty much every Loomian in the game. Swolder and Terraclaw have better coverage, while having better defense. There are other Ambush users which are better, like Joltooth and Cannabo. And while Terrafly is a toxic type, once Levitate comes up, it's not going to get rid of Poison Barbs anymore. So, unfortunately, Terrafly is just going to fall off in the future. And even now, it's not really that good. So, it is in the C tier. Terraclaw, just like Swolder, one of the most underrated Loomians in the entire game. It's going in the same tier as Swolder. This might be way too high for Terraclaw, but the thing that really makes Terraclaw so good is its really high ranged defense. It can pretty much soak any ranged hit in the entire game. I mean, it lives 2 hits from a Wintrix. That's insane. 2 hits from a Wintrix. And while there are Loomians that can wall this thing, like Obsidian and Tundralin, which, yeah, Obsidian and Tundralin really suck, we get that. There are some legit Loomians that can wall, like Zulong, and pretty much any range attacker in the game that does not hit it super effectively. The only flaws with Terraclaw is that it needs to rely on Parasitize in order to get HP back, so it is not a very reliable range tank. Even though it is the bulkiest range tank in the entire game, it's not very reliable, and that's why it's in the B tier and not any higher. To be fair, B tier might even be too high for some people, but you know what? I use Terraclaw a lot, I know how to use it, so it's one in the B tier. Ragoon, B-. Probably too high for Ragoon, but guess what? Ability Thief is just a very unique ability, and the fact that you can steal any ability in the entire game definitely gives Ragoon some bonus points. While it's not an amazing Loomian, it can definitely be very fun to use. It's definitely very fun. It's definitely worth trying out if you haven't tried it already. Borak, A-. It hits very hard, and with the addition of specialty boots, now gives Borak a massive speed threat that can actually speed creep a lot of Loomians. So yeah, Borak hits very hard, and yeah, that's pretty much all that it does. It hits very hard. That's pretty much what Borak has been in Loomian Legacy's entire life cycle. Eliguana, B tier. Eliguana has some stuff, but the problem is that Eliguana cannot hit plant types. Not to mention that there's some lovely Loomians like Baneki that just straight up wall ya. Nevermare as well, straight up wall ya. So, Yeah, Iguana has really fallen off because of all the plant types that are added in the game now. Not to mention that Light Electric just is not the best offensively. And even though it has very good range defense, its other support move is Tase. And while Tase can be very good in certain situations, why would you not run Raging Flame, a Raging Flame Loomian, or a Toxic Loomian? I think a burn on a melee attacker or a poison on a stall Loomian is more effective than a tase. The only way I could see a paralyze be very good if it's on a very fast Loomian. That's kind of it. Like, Iguana definitely has some stuff to it, and that's why it's in the B tier and not lower. But I don't think it's that good. Gastroke, C tier. Just like with Luxor, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Thing is, don't have this thing out against melee attackers. Melee attackers can literally obliterate Gastro. Although for range attackers, it's the bulkiest range tank in the entire game, and it does have Briar Block, meaning you can actually chip those melee attackers. So, there's that. It ain't amazing, it definitely is rubbish, but I don't think it's in D or F tier territory. Wiki F tier. The thing is with Wiki, if its roles actually supported team play right now, it would probably be D tier. It would probably be above Florent and Cinemoth. Problem is, there's no reason to run a support Loomian on your team right now. 5 Loomians to bring in the battle is simply too little. If we had like teams of 6 that we can bring, Wiki might be worth a spot. But since we can only bring 5 in a battle, Wiki is simply not worth that spot to fill on a team. So, that's why it's in the F tier. Chartiki, A-. I love Chartiki. This thing is really good. It walls a lot of Loomians. Fire Grass is a really good typing overall, both offensively and defensively. Has Muck Blast for coverage, can heal, has Burn Up. It pretty much has everything. Honestly, I'm putting it a tier higher. I'm putting it in the A tier. Its defensive typing is literally that good. So yeah, Chartiki definitely deserves to be in the A tier. Waka D tier. Its defensive typing is awful. The only reason it's saved from being in the F is because it actually has some really good coverage. And while under Bane of Haste can be very dangerous. But other than that, Waka does not have that much going for it. Alright. Let's go into Sachi. Sachi's in the B tier. Very frail, and it pretty much dies to priority. But it has a lot of ranged attack and hits very hard. Problem is, it doesn't have a very high speed stat for what its role is, 89 speed. You pretty much have to pair this with a Baffle user in order to be very effective with it. Despite that, though, it can still be used really well. Although, just don't take too much damage on this, because it can pretty much get killed by anything in the game. So, yeah, you gotta be very careful with Sachi. Cinemars? A tier. The fact that it can talent trade lazy, it can set up, has solid coverage, and has a very good range and melee defense, just makes Cinemars one of the best overall tanks in the entire game. So, Cinemars definitely deserves to be in the A tier. There's honestly not many flaws with Cinemars. The only reason it's not higher is because it doesn't have too many other pros that bring it over the top. So, Cinemars is an A tier Loomian. Ventation. Very questionable where I'm about to put Ventation. B-. A lot of people consider Ventation one of the worst melee tanks in the entire game. But I have a few pros that could legitimately make Ventation good. It has the highest melee defense out of any Loomian in the entire game. It also has sharp edges which should chip other Loomians. And its other ability, Protective Shell, pretty much makes it win in any setup battle. So you can set up Brate 6 times against a Tundralin and you will win every time. You can set up against an Obsidian and you will win every time because of Protective Shell. Not to mention that you do have Soft Water for healing, and you have Geyser which can burn melee attackers. While it's not the most reliable Loomian, and yes, there are other melee tanks which are better, Ventation is not that bad. In fact, I actually think it's kinda alright. It definitely deserves to be over C tier, in my opinion. Your Soul, okay. Not too much to say about this one. Your Soul is definitely an S tier Loomian. I think at around the same tier as where Vesperatu is. This thing hits very hard, hits amazingly hard, has Slapdown. It's considered an Uber for a reason. I don't And while I don't think it deserves Uber status anymore, it definitely hits very hard and definitely is very dangerous to beat. Your snack is A-. Even though the Baffle meta has fallen off, even though running Baffle on Loomians is not the meta right now, your snack is very tanky, and that actually has a lot of utility. If it had a little bit more melee attack that actually threatened Loomians more, this thing would definitely be higher than A-. It has double priority, pep jab that hits solidly hard, slap down, and baffles. So your stack has a lot going for it, even though it doesn't have an ability to increase its health. So yeah, your snack definitely deserves A-. Revenine, A. One of the best revenge killers in the entire game with vengeance. Nothing else to say here. One of the top revenge killers in the entire game. Eruptodon, B tier. Solid coverage, and has Magnify. It can even get rid of barbs with Mudslide, so Eruptodon has a bit going for it. Although it is pretty frail and doesn't have the best speed stat, so it definitely is only a B tier Loomian. We got Crackalola, it's a Volcano. It's a tank. That's pretty much all it is, a tank. It's going in the B- tier. It does have Raging Flame, meaning that it could really mess up melee attackers. Not to mention that it does have Rejuvenate, so this thing is pretty much a tank. But other than that, it does nothing else. So, B-. Vocalola, B. The reason why Vocalola is higher than Crackalola is because it has Brawn Boost, meaning that in the mid-game, it could set up a Brawn Boost, and then it could sweep with its really good coverage. Savage Greed, Earthquake, Blaze Punch, Coconut Bomb. This thing can be very dangerous. It has some really good coverage. The only reason it's not higher than B is because you pretty much need the Brawn Boost in order to do extra damage, as without the Brawn Boost, it doesn't hit that hard. So, yeah, it's only a B tier Loomian. Festifer, D tier. D tier, I'm sorry. Festifer just is not that good. It's too slow to be utilized as a chilled user. And even with its secret ability Regift, is weak to so many typings that it's just not easily utilized. So, Festifer is D tier. Although, if ran with Regift, I could see it being used a little bit. That's why it's in the D tier above Cinnamon, Florent, and Wiki. Obsidragon, nothing else to say there. Resilience, Body Crash, Beast Slumber, Drudge. Yeah, nothing else to say there. Trumbull is a B- tier. It's solid, but not the most amazing thing in the world. Mewtwo's a little higher because it does have light coverage, meaning you can hit those spirit types really well, but other than that, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It does hit very hard, though. The cows do hit very hard, but that's kind of all that they have. Globodemic, B tier. Probably one of the best utility Loomians in the entire game. It can place barbs, it can hypnotize, it can actually health gift. It's the best health gift user in the entire game. And it does have some good coverage moves for offensive-wise, so Globodemic does have some stuff going for it. Icicle, C tier. Icicle has some stuff going for it, and ever since it got expertise, it actually got a little bit better, meaning that it doesn't lose that much energy. It has pivot moves like Soulstorm. No, not Soulstorm. Fade Away. And Baffle, so it can pivot, and it has Rejuvenate. It's a Baffle user that has Rejuvenate, which definitely gives Icicle some points. And also, it's an Ice type that is immune to a Brawler type move, which does help it a lot, actually. Although, it doesn't have anything else that really puts it over the top, and that's why it's in the C tier. Ferroglyph, B tier. Just a very solid Loomian overall. Not too many flaws with Ferroglyph, but not too many pros. Garbantis, A-. Really tanky Loomian on the melee side, and the fact that you don't have to run any investment on melee attack and you can run it all on your melee defense definitely makes Garbantis really scary. You can pretty much run everything on your melee defense, meaning that you hit very hard while being melee bulky. Garbantis is definitely a very good Loomian. Stratosaur, A-. While there are bug types that can hit Stratosaur now, it's still really good. It only has 2 weaknesses. Very range bulky. Has set up with Magnify. So yeah, has Magnify now. And it can even tase other Loomians. So Stratosaur has a lot going for it. It definitely deserves to be in the A-, maybe even higher. Cyborg, B-. Fun Loomian to use, though. A very fun Loomian. And if you run the tank variant with Health Amulet, it's actually one of the tankiest Loomians in the entire game with that. So it definitely could be used pretty well. Another very underrated Loomian, in my opinion. But it's not the most amazing thing in the world. That's why it's in the B- tier. Now we get into Tyrex. S tier. Nothing else to say about Tyrex. Tyrex is really good. One of the best typings in the entire game. Can hit Venilin and Tundralin. Can lower the attack of melee attackers. So yeah, this thing is really good. Munchwheel, A-. Munchwheel is solid. It could be used as a very good rev-up user, and it can be used as a very solid specialization user. So Munchwheel definitely deserves to be in the A-. Now, Guardrone. Guardrone's really hard to rank. If I were to rank Guardrone, I'd probably rank it in B-. Barely out of the B. The reasons are why is because it pretty much is reliant on that clutch ability to do stuff. So if there are like barbs or icicle traps in the field, that Guardrone is not going to be used reliably. Even then, you need that Accelerate in order to outspeed everything in the game, and that Rageful plushie boost in order to actually really sweep Loomians. Although once you do have those, guess what? This thing can absolutely sweep your team. So yeah, Guardrone is definitely very scary if you use it in the correct way. But for the most part, it isn't that scary. Hunder, A-. Insane coverage and hits pretty hard. Hunder is a very good late game cleaner, and it definitely deserves to be above B tier. Arpygo, I think B-. The reason why it's not in the B tier, because the thing is with Arpygo, when you run Magnify on Arpygo, you're dropping either extra coverage or Rejuvenate. You cannot drop one of the two. You either don't have the best coverage, or you don't have a healing option. And it really hurts Arpygo in this case, because its coverage opportunities are not as good as Boneki's, so it definitely falls to the B- tier because of that, even though it has Magnify. Skellic, same tier. Skellic is very scary, especially with Drudge, and it actually has some very good coverage moves too. But again, no, Skellic is just not quite as effective as other Loomians in the game. Joltooth, same place. Just like with Skellic, there are Loomians that wall it, and while it does have Clay Slap now to hit Tyrex, you still can't hit Tundralin, and you still can't hit Obsidian. So, yeah. Yes, and I know Primal Slash does hit Obsidian super effectively. Obsidian's that broken. It probably soaks 2 Primal Slashes anyway. Yeah, that's still kind of nuts thinking about it. Now we got Infernix. Infernix is actually B tier. Infernix is very good, and even though it's unviable, considering that there are other fire types which are better than it, it does have some stuff going for it. It has very good range bulk, has Phoenix Flame to get rid of any bad status, and it actually has some solid coverage as well. Infernix is definitely very solid. So, Infernix definitely deserves B tier. We also got Dorgo. Dorgo is in B-. It's a very solid Surrogate user, but not quite as good as Cosmere Unleashed. And also, it does have Slapdown, meaning it can actually get rid of items, add barbs and poison barbs. So, actually has a lot going for Dorgo. Although, thing is, I kind of see it as a gift Gobademic with Slapdown. And while that extra Slapdown can be very good, I think having Health Gift is better, and the extra speed. Colossotrops, B tier. Now, I could see why y'all would want to put Colossotrops higher. Considering with Frail Armor and Rageful Plushie and a Brawn boost, you can get to +4, which is absolutely nuts. Considering how good Colossotrops' coverage is, the thing is that there's a lot that you need to do in order to make Colossotrops be really dangerous. You need to go in on a melee attacker that hits you super effectively. That's how you can make Colossotrops be very scary. And while it can be utilized really well, it doesn't have an ability it doesn't have anything that can heal itself. So, Colossotrops does struggle, but it can definitely be a very hard-hitting wall breaker as well. So that's why it's in the B tier. Malmerk, B tier. Very bulky Loomian with a very solid defensive typing that has Rejuvenate, and it's very good in 2v2s. Probably one of the better 2v2 Loomians. So yeah, Malmerk definitely deserves to be in the B tier. Metatoad, A tier. Very bulky on both sides, hits extremely hard with Cycle Slap and Metal. And let's not mention that Specialization makes this thing pretty much nuke anything in the entire game. Meditoad definitely deserves to be in the A tier. Honestly, it could even deserve higher. It could even be in the S tier. Now let's go for Blowtox. Blowtox is B-. I don't think it's as bad as anything in the C tier or lower, but I could definitely see why this thing isn't considered that good, considering that Bar Blast is kind of a thing, which we'll get to in a second. Blowtox, though, is still pretty solid in its own right. Bulk up, it still has Icicle Traps, and it could still heal up, and for being a tank, it actually is one of the fastest tanks in the entire game. So, it does actually have a couple things going for it, but it's not the most reliable thing overall, considering that Bar Blast is pretty much better in every way besides offensive pressure. So yeah, now we're into the Bar Blast S tier. Nothing else to say here. It pretty much soaks anything but a Specialization Meditoad, and if ran, there's so many sets you can run on it too. You can run Power Focus, you can run Poison, Icicle Traps, Toxic Blast, like, there's a lot of moves you can run on Bar Blast. Probably one of the best overall tanks in the entire game right there. Garlash. A- tier, just like Hunter. While it doesn't have as good as coverage as Hunter, it is faster with specialty boots, and you can barter the boots away to really mess up a tank. So, Garlash has some other options that Hunter doesn't, but it also has some options that Hunter doesn't have. So, yeah, I think they belong in the same tier. Deludrix, S tier. Deludrix is the best offensive Loomian in the game because it has the best coverage in the entire game. And the fact that it has Zip Zap, meaning that you can pivot out of range tanks, can really change the game. The only thing you gotta be very careful about, though, is Brawler priority. Don't Zip Zap against Brawler-type Loomians. They're gonna Quick Punch you and one-shot you, so be very careful with that. It is very frail, and that's why it's out of the broken tier. But, yeah. Just don't Zip Zap on Brawler types, and you're fine. Just fully commit, switch out. Whippledrift. Whippledrift is in B-. It can be a very scary sweeper if used correctly, but you need multiple magnifiers in order to be very dangerous. And it's not even the best Bequeath user considering that there's Terracino, so it does kind of fall off a bit. It's only in the B- tier. Hoganosh. B- surprisingly. I do think it is better than all these Loomians down here. It actually has some solid bulk to it, and it even has solid coverage. This thing is even good in 2v2, so Hoganosh does actually have quite a few things going for it. It may be considered the worst fire type in the game, but it actually has a couple things that are going for it that has to put it above everything in the C tier. It might be the lowest Loomian in the B- tier, but the fact that it is this high definitely gives Hoganosh a massive advantage, and that's why it's in the B- tier. Had a lot going for it. Mocho, A-. Amazing Loomian, but you pretty much only have one shot to use it. It would probably be A if Sugar Rush wasn't just activated once, but even then, this thing is really scary. Even after one piece of mind, this thing can be extremely dangerous. Mocho is definitely A- worthy. Spreezy, B tier. Very annoying Loomian to deal with. It can even place poison barbs, so yeah. This pretty much is a Loomian that pretty much has every move in the entire game. So yeah, Spreezy is very hard to beat. Servalin, D tier. Pretty much has nothing going for it, considering that Borak is a better boost user, Revenine's a better Vengeance user, and not to mention that its coverage is so bad that Spirit types just wall it. Although it isn't F tier bad, it is better than Cinemoth, and it is better than Florent and Wiki. But in the D tier, I think it's around the middle. So yeah, Servalin isn't that good. Windolin is B-. The reason why Windolin is so low, even though it does have some very good perks over Vesperatu, is because it is very frail. It dies very easily. Just run Spirit priority if you really want to beat this thing really badly. Not to mention that it doesn't have any way to heal when Vesperatu does have a way to heal. And yes, while this does have some very good things over Vesperatu, like the 4 extra speed makes it actually outspeed Dimmeray and Garlash and Buzzlin, which are actually 3 massive threats. It doesn't do anything else beyond that. So that's why Wendelin is B- and not higher. It's probably the highest in the B- tier, though. Curlin, B tier. The thing is with Curlin, if it wasn't missing every single attack, S tier. If it wouldn't miss every single attack, S tier. Its coverage is amazing. It hits extremely hard. But the only reason it's this low is because it freaking misses all the time. It's literally miss, miss, miss. Curlin always misses, and I can't stand it anymore. So you're going to the B tier. Stop missing your attacks. If you stop missing your attacks, S tier. But before you do that, B tier. Sorry, Curlin. Now we got Zeppelin. Zeppelin is definitely an A tier Loomian. Has Mudslide to get rid of barbs. Hits extremely hard, and even though it doesn't have a great offensive typing, it does hit very hard. It's a provoke user, which is really nice. A very good provoke user with peace of mind. So Zeppelin is a really good offensive Loomian, and that's why it deserves to be in the A tier. Venolin, S tier. One of the best ranged tanks in the entire game, and since it's a toxic type, it only has 2 weaknesses, so Venolin is really good. Plus, you can get rid of poison barbs, you can barter heavy shackles to other Loomians, you have Rejuvenate, you can charade them. There are a lot of different moves you can actually run on Venolin. Venolin is definitely an S tier Loomian. Wrestlin, B tier. Wrestlin hits very hard with Ace, but it doesn't hit spirit types that hard. All it has for coverage is Blaze Punch, and while it can hit a few spirit types like Nevermare and Nosferatu, it doesn't hit all of them well overall. And not to mention that the coverage move doesn't hit as hard with Ace. Ace gives you a massive boost to your attack, and when you lose that Ace boost, Wrestling does not hit that hard, even though it does have a high melee attack. So that's why it's in the B tier, not higher. Buzzlin, B-. Hits hard, and can actually barter Volcanic Ashes to melee attackers, which is very nice. And also, I really like its Adaptive Assault move compared to the other Loomians that has Adaptive Assault. But it's not the best Loomian in the game. There are a lot of Loomians which are better than this. But it does have a few perks that keep it out of C tier or lower. Tundralin, S tier. Still a very good melee tank, and it's still extremely dangerous if you're not prepared properly. Pyrolin, man, does it belong in Broken? Broken or S tier, everyone? Broken or S tier? I'm gonna go with S tier. The only reason it's not in Broken is because it does have a low speed stat. It only has 66 speed. If its speed was like 75 plus, Broken all the way. It barely misses the Broken tier, but it's amazing. Fanning Flame can give you a +3 with Rageful Plushie, Peace of Mind, Rejuvenate, Fire Breath on a 133 ranged attack Loomian. Yeah, it's the best Vari and the best fire type in the entire game. It's not even close. Oxydrake, A-. It's still a very good Loomian. Even though it has fallen off, it's still a very good Loomian that can driving force other Loomians out. Very bulky on both sides, and actually has a lot of resistances, so Oxydrake is still pretty solid. Harvest Sect, A-. Just like Oxydrake. Very good melee tank, and can actually be very good. It can actually wall a lot of Metaloomians. Like, Harvest Sect's really good. Although its ability can hold it back sometimes. That's why it's not higher than A-. Wintrix, S tier. With the Wise ability, makes it that there are no Loomians that could swap into a Wintrix. And even if you run other abilities like Glide and Chill, your opponent's never going to know that until your Wintrix doesn't attack. So they assume that every Wintrix runs Wise. So the fact that there's always that Wise threat puts Wintrix very high. And then there's Chill that does extra damage. And then there's Glide that can make you a late game sweeper. Yeah, Wintrix is very good. It also has a very solid speed stat with Perch and Peace of Mind. So Wintrix definitely deserves to be in the S tier. Snagoop, A-. Very good Loomian that can place poison barbs and it can even poison other Loomians. Has Buck Up, has Provoke, and it even has Muck Blast and Jetstream. This thing hits very hard. A very good late game cleaner. Sir Kame. Sir Kame is a B tier. Is it B tier or B-? I will say B-. Barely, though. Very bulky Loomian on both sides. Very bulky Loomian on both sides. Body Crash actually makes it hit pretty solidly hard. The thing that's unfortunate, though, is I think Makoro is actually better than Sakame, although it is with personal preference, as Sakame can actually hit hard on the range side, as Makoro can't, so it's pretty much just an option. Sakame is definitely very good, but I do think it is still B-. Bonfino, same way. Same way for Bonfino. I think it's the same way. Has some very good things that go for it, but it does have a lot of flaws that does keep it out. It doesn't hit that hard as a late game cleaner. And while its Stall Fino variant is extremely annoying to beat, the opposing Loomian is not trapped in. They can just swap out to another Loomian. So, yeah. Bonfino is only B-. Cannabo, A-. Very dangerous Loomian, especially with running with specialty boots. This thing probably has some of the best coverage out of any brawler type in the game. And yeah, this thing definitely deserves to be in the A- tier. Has some very good abilities to boot as well. So yep, Cannabo's in the A- tier. Samarine is in the B. Has a lot of pros, but also has a lot of cons. So many weaknesses, but it does have a few strengths. Rev Up with Sharpen and very good coverage makes Samarine pretty good, but it needs a better water-type move. And no, Aqua Jaws does not count as a good water-type move. It sucks because it always misses. So yeah, Lumello is C tier. And this may be a little bit odd, considering that Lumello used to be part of the meta, but the thing is with Lumello, while it's very bulky, the thing is that there are so many better barb setters. And while this can place barbs and poison barbs, and it's still very bulky, there's just other Loomians that you could utilize better. There's Seer Knight that can lower the melee attack. There's Gobademic and Dorgo that are like suicide leads. So, there's just other Loomians which are better overall, which Lumello just doesn't have anything else other than just, hey, I'm here to place barbs. It does have Repugnant, though, so if you are struggling with, like, Hunders and Garlashes, you can run this thing to beat them. But other than that, it doesn't have too much that goes for it, so that's why it's a C-tier Loomian. Terrashino, A-. The only typeless type Loomian that I even consider to be good in this game. Amazing. Very bulky on both sides. Very good Bequeath user. Very good Loomian overall. Just a very good Loomian overall. There are almost no flaws other than the fact that it doesn't resist any moves. Laricat is a B-tier Loomian, and the reason why it's in the B tier and not below that is because with Headache Split and Hypnotize can make it very dangerous. Has a very solid speed stat, and yeah, this thing is actually really solid with Headache Split and Hypnotize. So yeah, or Headache Split and Poison Barb. So this thing is actually very dangerous. I would actually be kind of careful with Laricat. Booneri, A tier. The fact that you could scout the opposing Loomian and check on what moves that they have pretty much makes this a guaranteed A tier Loomian. I don't think it belongs to be higher though, because there are only certain Loomians you can beat with Booneri. So yeah, that's why it's only A tier and not higher. But the fact that you could scout the opposing Loomian to see what moves that they have makes Booneri probably the easiest Loomian to use in the entire game. Sinogre, B tier. It has Spite. It has Poison, it has some solid moves, but the thing is, once another Loomian gets Spite, Sinogre is dropping C tier. Trust me, once there's another Loomian that gets Spite, Sinogre is falling off. But since it's the only Loomian that has Spite, and it can actually utilize it quite well, it definitely belongs in the B tier. Helvantic. A tier, all the way. Helvantic is one of the best late game sweepers in the entire game, and with specialty boots, makes this one of the most scariest Loomians in the game. Amazing coverage as well. The only Loomians that can properly beat this are Earth types, and even then, you can still hit them neutrally, so Helvantic is extremely scary, and it's one of the best melee attackers in the entire game. Imperior, A tier as well. The Resentful ability is game-changing, can completely change the entire matchup. And while this thing is usually used wrong, Imperior is definitely extremely scary just by its Resentful ability alone. It can even provoke other Loomians, has great coverage, has fadeaway pivot that's actually worth using, and yeah, Imperior is just a very solid Loomian overall, so that, yeah, it belongs in the A tier. Hollybunch, C tier. C tier. It's that bad. It can't hit plant types. It cannot hit plant types. It can't hit plant types. It's so slow. It's way too slow. And even though it can hit hard, once you use a couple attacks, your damage goes down. So, unfortunately, Holly Bunch is only in the C tier. Barbadger, though, A tier. This thing is insanely scary. And even though it has an extremely bad defensive typing, its ability Dauntless uses that bad defensive typing as Barbadger's hidden strength. Because if the opposing Loomian has a super effective move, you gain a +1 melee attack. And I know what you're thinking. You don't get a melee attack boost when you go up against a Loomian that doesn't have a super effective move. You know what you do? Brawn boost. So yeah, that's why Barbadger is extremely scary. And the fact that it has Ice Brawler offense with Earth coverage, yeah, Barbadger is one of the best offensive Loomians in the entire game. Definitely deserves to be in the A tier. Fishcarnia, B tier. Very solid range tank that can actually one of the best re-gift users as well. Very solid Loomian. Only flaw about it is that it doesn't really hit that hard. It needs multiple Peace of Minds in order to be extremely dangerous as an offensive option, but very good tank. Very good tank. Baneki, A- tier. This might be shocking. This might even be too high. But Baneki has so much it actually goes for. Has quite a few really good immunities. Can actually wall a lot of Loomians. Has Magnify and very good offensive coverage. Has Poison, Boom Bash to hit bug types, Landslide. You even have I think it even has Mudslide, so it can get rid of barbs if it really wants to. And it does have Life Drain to gain HP back. So this thing is actually very good. There's a lot that are actually going for Baneki. I don't think it belongs to be high in the A- tier. It might be the lowest in the A- tier now thinking about it, but definitely deserves to be talked about and definitely deserves to be used more. It definitely is A-. Now, we're going to go to Sorelli. Sorelli is a B-tier Loomian just with Appetite alone, but it wasn't for Appetite. Can I tell you where Sorelli would go if it wasn't for Appetite? F. But since it does have Appetite, B-tier. Sea Drake, B-tier. Very good wall breaker, very good melee attacker, but the only reason why it's not higher is because there's just a lot of good melee attackers at the moment. And while Sea Drake can be a very scary sweeper, especially if used early to mid-game, thing is, there's Tatab, there's Barbadger, there's Helvantic, there's Garlash and Hunder for late game, there's Garbantis, there's Barrock. So yeah, CJ does kind of struggle, not to mention it's very frail on both sides. So yeah, and since it's pure plant, it doesn't get stabbed from its ancient and water coverage. So yeah, that's why Sea Drake is in the B tier. Although I do think it would belong in the high B tier, though. Now we get to the roamers, and man, there's a lot of roamers we got to talk about. Dusket, B tier. Dusket has a lot that goes for it. Has Raging Flame, has Fade Away, has Outburst. There's actually a lot of moves for Dusket. But the thing is, the only reason why it's not higher than B tier is because the thing is, it doesn't have anything that it excels in. It doesn't have anything that Dusket excels in. But it does fill in a lot of roles that you can run, so it does make Dusket unpredictable. So that's why it's in the B tier. Ikazune, A- tier. Very good pivot user, very good boots user, can be good with Magnify as well, definitely deserves to be in the A- tier. Protagon, B-. I'm sorry. Protagon's in the B- tier, and even though this is a Loomian that can beat up Cidragon and Tundralin, it gets exploited for pretty much most of the game. There are so many Loomians that can pretty much just make their range defense one higher, so Protagon does not hit that hard. Yeah. It's kind of sad how much Protagon has fallen. I mean, I even consider Zulon better than Protagon. This thing is just not that good at the moment. It's really sad. I think the only way Protagon will get respectively better is once there's another Analyze user in the game that requires its melee attack to be higher, meaning that there are not so many Loomians that will rely on Protagon getting a melee attack boost over a ranged one. So, yeah. But until that gets added, Protagon is unfortunately a B- tier. Mutagon, alright then. You know where that goes. Y'all know where that goes. Broken. No other words to say there. Cephalops, A tier. Very scary. Soul Drain, Icicle Traps, Hypnotize, Barter Heavy Shackles. A lot that goes for it, actually. Cephalops is very good. It definitely belongs A tier. You get Metronet. Again, I think Oh, this is tough. I think I'm going to put it in the A tier. Very dangerous, especially with Hypnotize. But again, just like in my recent top 15 video, when you use Hypnotize, you drop either Fire Coverage or Mind Stab. And dropping either one of those two moves is really crucial in the long run. So yeah, that's why Metronet's in the A tier, not higher. Even though it's one of the most annoying Loomians to deal with in the entire game. Wobulus. Wobulus is A- tier. Yeah, A-. A- is a good spot. Very good overall tank. One of the best barb users in the entire game. It's also one of the best barb users that can use Driving Force. So yeah. And it can hit a lot of different Loomians because it has really good coverage. So Wobulus is really good. Probably one of the best tanks in the game because not only it has great utility, but it also hits solidly hard. So yeah, Wobulus belongs in the A-. Nimue, B tier. I'm even debating about putting it in B-. It's probably at the lowest of the B tier. The thing is, light air is just so bad offensively. Like, light air is just so bad offensively. But it does hit pretty hard. And it does have Peace of Mind and Perch and Hypnotize. So it does have some moves that do go for it. But other than that, its offensive typing is simply too rough to put it higher than a B. Cosmere and Case, it pretty much soaks hits. That's pretty much all it does. But Cosmere cracked, broken. Nothing else to say about this one. This is pretty much the definition of a perfect Loomian. There are no flaws with Cosmere cracked. The only flaw is that metal types can beat it, and even then, after a couple Peace of Minds, you just mess them up. So yeah, Cosmere cracked, broken. Cosmere Unleashed, S tier or broken. I'm putting it in the broken. The thing is, I would probably rank Cosmere lower than a few in the S tier. But the thing is, the thing that makes Cosmere Unleashed broken is the ability it steals. It can steal Ace from a Wrestling. It can steal Appetite from a Sorelli. It can steal Total Eclipse from a Eclipse. It can steal Rev Up from a Samarine. It can steal Specialization from a Metatoad and run Boots in one move. So that's what makes Cosmere broken in my opinion. And even though it might not be as high as some of the other broken tier Loomians, it's broken. There's no doubt about it. Especially when you run Appetite with Cosmere. Probably the most broken Loomian in the entire game with Appetite. So, yeah. I think Cosmere Unleashed deserves to be in the broken tier. Nevermare. A-. Very good defensive typing with very good attack. Very good coverage as well. But you pretty much rely on getting the critical hit to do extra damage. Because if you have a play without getting the critical hit, Nevermare does not do that much. But if you do get the crit, it hits very hard. So, Nevermare is definitely an A-. Aklos, B-. Hits hard, but that's kind of it. It does have Brawn Boost and Driving Force, though, but that's kind of it. Elephage, B. Very good Loomian. Very good Loomian. And I know this could be considered a pre-evolved Loomian, but I kind of don't. You find it's in the wild. It's a roamer. I'm going to count as a roamer. This thing is very good. Very fast. Very good pivot options. And has very good utility options with either Teardown, Rejuvenate, or Final Ruse. So there's a lot of good options to run with Elephage. Phage Knot is even better, though. A-. Very good melee defense. Very bulky, which is very good for Phage Knot. It's a fast Loomian with very good bulk and very good utility. And even though this thing can't really hit plant types unless you have Rant, this thing is still very scary. It definitely deserves to be an A-. Now we get to all the Gargolem forms. Gargolem-based B form. B tier. The thing is, it's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but why wouldn't you just use the speed or attack form? So that's why it's only in the B tier. Attack form, A-. It hits extremely hard, but that's kind of all it has. Priority destroys it. Ice, anything that hits it even neutrally destroys it. So yeah, this can be used really well if used right, but it's not as good. It hits extremely hard, but that's kind of it. Speed form, though? I'm putting it in the same tier. Speed form is awesome, actually. It outspeeds everything in the game. Can place barbs. It's also the fastest Driving Force user in the entire game, too. You can outspeed any Driving Force user, which is nice. It even has Slapdown. So it actually has a lot going for Gargolem Speed. Gargolem Speed I might even consider better than the attack form, which is kind of weird. So But yeah, Gargoyle Speed form is in the A- tier, and defense form is in the B tier. Very good defense on both sides, and ever since it got empathized, can actually gain HP back. So, yep, Gargoyle defense form is in the B tier. And the final Loomian, let me just make sure there aren't any Loomians that we're missing. Yep, is Celesting. And Celesting is a B tier Loomian. Very good in some areas, and has some great utility options, but that's kind of all it has. There's kind of no other reason to use it other than summon anyway. So, not to mention that there are Loomians like Chartiki that kind of like wall you. So, Celesting is only in the B tier. And that is my Loomian Legacy 2023 PvP tier list. So yeah, I'm going to just show you it one more time. And the worst Loomians in the game are either Cinema, Florent, or Wiki Wiki. I personally think it's Florent, but I think everyone would say Wiki Wiki just because there's no point in using it. And the best Loomian in the game, I think right now, is like Obsidian. I think it makes the most sense, although Eclipse and Mutagon are also up there. So yeah, this is my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me making a tier list on the top PvP Loomians in the entire game and making a tier list on it. If there are any Loomians that I missed or any Loomians that you'll want to rank higher, tell me in the comments below. And I will see y'all all later. Bye-bye!